They say blood is thicker than water, but in the world of the shifters, debt is heavier than both. Have you ever wondered what your life is actually worth? For Seraphina Cross, the answer was printed on a crumpled receipt, $200,000 and safe passage out of the territory. Her own brothers didn't just betray her, they packaged her up and sold her to the deadliest alpha in the country, a man known for slaughtering his enemies without blinking. But there was one detail Caleb and Jasper Cross missed, one secret that would turn this transaction into a war. They didn't know that the Alpha King, Dominic Sterling, hadn't just been waiting for a mate, he had been dreaming of Seraphina's face every night for 20 years. Buckle up. This isn't a fairy tale. This is a reckoning. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. She wasn't being dramatic. She was sitting in the back of a beat-up 2018 Ford F-950, her hands zip-tied together with industrial-strength plastic that bit into her wrists. The heater was broken, and the cab smelled of stale menthol cigarettes and wet dog. The scent of her brothers. "Stop sniffling, Sarah," Caleb grunted from the driver's seat. He didn't look at her in the rearview mirror. He couldn't. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "Harder for who?" Seraphina's voice was a cracked whisper. She was 22, but tonight she felt like a child again, small and helpless against the brutality of the men who were supposed to protect her. "You're selling me, Caleb, to the Obsidian Ridge Pack. Do you know what they do to wolves like us? We're runts to them." "Toys." Jasper, sitting in the passenger seat, turned around. He looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes were bruises of exhaustion, the mark of a gambling addiction that had spiraled out of control. "It's not a sale, Sarah. It's a trade, an arrangement." "It's 200 grand, Jasper," she spat, fear momentarily giving way to a white-hot rage. "I saw the texts on your burner phone. You owe the cartel, so you're trading your baby sister to Dominic Sterling's enforcers to wipe your slate clean." Jasper flinched, turning back to the windshield. The wipers slapped back and forth, a hypnotic rhythm counting down the seconds to her doom. The Rusty Creek Pack, their home, was barely a pack at all. It was a collection of drifters and weak-blooded wolves living in a trailer park on the edge of Olympic National Park. They had no territory, no power, and no alpha strong enough to challenge a stray cat, let alone the Obsidian Ridge. Obsidian Ridge was different. They were corporate. They were lethal. They owned half the real estate in downtown Seattle and controlled the shipping docks. Their alpha, Dominic Sterling, was a rumor wrapped in a nightmare. They said he was 7 feet tall in his skin, a monster who had wiped out the Northern Clan single-handedly 5 years ago. And now, Seraphina was his purchase. The trucks slowed as they turned off the highway onto a gravel logging road. The towering pines blocked out the moonlight, plunging them into oppressive darkness. "We're here," Caleb said, his voice shaking. "Please," Seraphina begged, the fight draining out of her, replaced by cold terror. "Caleb, please, I'm your sister. Mom made you promise. On her deathbed, she made you promise." "Mom's dead," Caleb snapped, killing the engine. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Caleb got out and opened the back door. The cold air hit Seraphina like a slap. He grabbed her arm, not roughly, but with a firmness that told her struggling was useless. He pulled her out onto the muddy ground. Waiting for them in the clearing was a black Range Rover, sleek and menacing. 2 men stood beside it. They wore bespoke charcoal suits that cost more than Seraphina's entire trailer. They didn't look like wolves. They looked like investment bankers who hunted people for sport. One of them stepped forward. This was Silas Vaughn, the beta of Obsidian Ridge. Serafina recognized him from the blurry photos in the newspapers. He was handsome in a sharp, terrifying way, with silver-rimmed glasses and eyes that looked like chips of ice. "The package," Silas said. His voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth. "She's not a package," Jasper muttered, stepping up beside Caleb. Silas merely raised an eyebrow. "The wire transfer has been initiated. $200,000 to the account in the Cayman Islands." "Do you have her documentation?" Caleb fumbled in his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. "Birth certificate, vaccination records, it's all there. She's healthy, never shifted though. She's a latent wolf." Silas took the envelope and opened it, scanning the papers with a penlight. "Latent, a wolf who cannot turn. Usually we call the weak, but the alpha has specific requirements." He looked up, his gaze landing on Serafina. She stood shivering in her oversized hoodie and jeans, mud soaking through her sneakers. She tried to hold his gaze, tried to summon some of the defiance her mother had raised her with, but her knees were shaking. Silas walked up to her. He towered over her. He reached out a gloved hand and tilted her chin up. He turned her head left, then right, inspecting her like a horse at an auction. "Clean her up," Silas said to the other man in the suit. "She smells like poverty and fear." "Wait," Serafina croaked. She looked at her brothers. Caleb was staring at his boots. Jasper was lighting a cigarette, his hands trembling so hard the flame danced. "You're just going to leave me? Just like that?" "Go, Sarah," Caleb whispered, his voice thick. "Just go." The second guard grabbed her arm. He didn't use zip ties. His grip was iron. He shoved her toward the Range Rover. "You'll regret this," Serafina screamed, the dam breaking as they shoved her into the leather back seat. "Caleb, Jasper, you're dead to me. Do you hear me? You're dead." The transaction was complete. As the Range Rover peeled away, leaving her brothers in the dust and darkness, Serafina didn't cry. The tears had evaporated. In their place, a cold, hard stone formed in her chest. She wasn't a wolf who could shift. She had no claws, and she had no fangs. But as she watched the trees blur by, she would survive Dominic Sterling, and one day she would buy her brothers' lives just to watch them bankrupt. They didn't blindfold her. They didn't need to. Serafina knew where they were going. The Obsidian Ridge estate was located on a private island in the Puget Sound, accessible only by a private bridge or ferry. They took the bridge, passing through 3 security checkpoints manned by guards with assault rifles. This wasn't a pack, it was a paramilitary organization. Serafina sat in silence. She had expected to be taken to a dungeon or a kennel. With that, expected to be taken to a dungeon or a kennel. Instead, the car wound up a paved driveway lined with ancient cedar trees, arriving at a sprawling modern mansion made of glass, steel, and dark stone. It looked like a villain's lair from a Bond movie, perched on a cliff overlooking the churning black ocean. "Get out." The guard grunted as the car stopped. Silas Vane opened her door. "Follow me. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact with the Alpha unless he initiates it. And for the love of the moon, try to stop shaking. He hates the smell of prey." "I'm not prey," Serafina said, her voice steadier than she felt. Silas paused, adjusting his glasses. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "We shall see." They walked through the massive double doors into a foyer that was larger than the entire trailer park she grew up in. The floors were polished concrete. The art on the walls was abstract and aggressive. It was cold. Everything was cold. "Wait here," Silas commanded. He left her standing in the middle of the foyer. Serafina hugged herself, looking around. There were no photos of family, no warmth, just power. 10 minutes passed. Then she heard footsteps. They weren't the heavy, stomping footsteps of a brute. They were slow, deliberate, heavy with authority. A door at the top of the floating staircase opened. A man walked out. Dominic Sterling. Serafina stopped breathing. The rumors didn't do him justice. He was massive, yes, broad-shouldered and tall, wearing a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and scarred from countless battles. But it wasn't his size that terrified her. It was his presence. His aura rolled down the stairs like a physical wave, heavy and suffocating. It smelled of ozone, pine, and something metallic, like blood on snow. It commanded submission. Serafina's wolf, the latent spirit deep inside her that never physically manifested, whined and rolled over, exposing its belly. No, she thought, digging her fingernails into her palms. I will not bow. Serafina felt like she was being dissected. She expected him to sneer, to inspect her teeth, to make a crude comment about the money he'd paid. Instead, his expression shifted. The cold indifference cracked. His brows knitted together. He took a sharp inhale, his nostrils flaring. You, he whispered. The voice was a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. Serafina blinked. Me? Dominic stepped off the final stair. He moved toward her. Not with the aggression of a predator, but with the trance-like focus of a sleepwalker. He stopped inches from her. She could feel the heat radiating off his body. He reached out a hand. Serafina flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, waiting for the strike. It never came. She felt a rough, warm thumb trace the line of her jaw. It was a touch so gentle it was almost ghostly. She opened her eyes. Dominic was looking at her with an expression of absolute bewilderment. One pain. Silas, Dominic said, his voice ragged, never breaking eye contact with Serafina. Yes, Alpha, Silas responded, sounding nervous for the first time. This is the girl from the Cross Brothers. The payment was... His thumb brushed over a tiny crescent-shaped scar on her chin, a scar she had gotten falling off a swing set when she was 6. The scar, Dominic murmured. It's real. What? Serafina whispered, pressed against the invisible wall of his intensity. Who are you? He demanded, his eyes searching hers frantically. What is your name? Serafina Cross. He pulled his hand away as if burned, turning his back to her. He walked to the window, gripping the frame until the metal groaned. 20 years, he said to the reflection in the glass. For 20 years I have seen your face every time I close my eyes. I thought I was going mad. I thought you were a ghost. He turned back to her, his eyes blazing with a golden light, the sign of his wolf rising to the surface. Why are you here, Serafina Cross? Why have you walked out of my nightmares and into my house? Serafina stood her ground. though her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I didn't walk," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I was sold. My brothers sold me to you for $200,000. Dominic went still. The golden light in his eyes darkened to a murderous amber. "Sold?" he repeated, the word dripping with danger. "Yes, to be your breeding stock." "That's what Sela said." Dominic laughed, but it was a dark, humorless sound. "Breeding stock? Is that what they think?" He walked back to her, towering over her once more. "You are not stock, Serafina. You are the woman who has haunted my sleep since I was a boy. And if your brothers sold you—" He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. "Then I am going to burn their world to the ground for insulting you." The first night in the Sterling mansion was not spent in a dungeon, but in the master suite's guest wing. The room was larger than the entirety of Serafina's childhood home. The sheets were Egyptian cotton. The bathroom was stocked with oils that smelled of lavender and sandalwood, and the view offered a panoramic look at the moonlit ocean. But Serafina didn't sleep. She sat in a velvet armchair pushed against the door, a heavy bronze statue of a wolf in her lap as a makeshift weapon. She replayed the encounter in the foyer over and over. "I have seen your face every time I close my eyes." It sounded like a pickup line, but Dominic Sterling didn't seem like the type of man who needed pickup lines. The look in his eyes, the raw, exposed vulnerability had been terrifyingly genuine. The next morning, a knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she said, gripping the statue. The door opened and a woman entered. She was tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in a white suit. She carried a tray of food. This was Isolde Voss, the PAC's head of PR, and according to the tabloids, the woman most likely to become the Luna of Obsidian Ridge. Isolde's eyes swept over the room, landing on the statue in Serafina's lap. She offered a tight, synthetic smile. "Put that down, dear. If the Alpha wanted to hurt you, a piece of bronze wouldn't stop him." Serafina lowered the statue, but didn't let go. "Who are you?" "I'm Isolde. I manage the Alpha's domestic affairs. Been here to get you ready." "Ready for what?" "Breakfast. The Alpha requests your presence." Isolde set the tray down. "Here are some clothes. Burn those rags you're wearing. You smell like a wet dog from the slums." Isolde tossed a garment bag onto the bed. "Listen to me closely, Serafina. I don't know what game Dominic is playing, buying a latent stray from the gutter. But don't get comfortable. He has moods. He has episodes. He's obsessed with some prophecy, some dream. You're just a shiny new object he's projecting his delusions onto." Isolde leaned in, her perfume sickly sweet. "Enjoy the silk sheets while you can. By next week, you'll be in the servants' quarters where you belong." She turned and clicked out of the room on her red-bottom heels. Serafina stared at the door. Prophecy? Delusions? She opened the garment bag. Inside was a simple, elegant sundress in pale blue. It fit perfectly. Too perfectly. Too perfectly. When she descended the stairs, the house was bustling. Staff moved silently, cleaning and organizing. Silver Fang was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "This way," he said, leading her not to a dining room, but to a glass-walled conservatory filled with orchids. Dominic was sitting at a small iron table, reading a file. He wore a casual sweater and jeans today, looking less like a warlord and more like a human being. But the air around him still crackled with power. He looked up as she entered. His eyes widened slightly. "Blue," he said softly. "I always dreamed of you in blue." Serafina sat opposite him. "Is this a game to you?" she asked, skipping the pleasantries. Isolde said you're delusional. Dominic's jaw tightened. Isolde talks too much. He closed the file. It was her file. He pushed it toward her. "I looked into your brother's debt. It wasn't just gambling, Serafina." Serafina looked at the folder. "What do you mean?" "They owed money to the Southern Cartel, but the debt wasn't for poker chips, it was for protection." "Protection from what?" "From you," Dominic said. Serafina frowned. "I'm a latent. I'm nobody. Why would they need protection from me?" Dominic leaned forward. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Your medical records, they're fake. Silas ran a blood sample we took from the handle of the car door you touched. You aren't latent, Serafina. He tapped the file. You have high concentrations of alpha blood, but it's dormant. Suppressed? Suppressed. Serafina felt the room spin. By who? By wolfsbane. Someone has been dosing you with liquid wolfsbane since you were a child. Just enough to keep your wolf asleep. Just enough to make you look weak. Serafina's mind flashed back to the vitamins her mother had insisted she take every morning. The bitter taste, her brothers continuing the tradition after their mother died. For your iron deficiency, Caleb had said. They poisoned me, she whispered. They kept you hidden, Dominic corrected, because if you weren't hidden, other packs would have come for you. A female alpha is rare. A female alpha with your bloodline is dangerous. My bloodline is trash. We are hearts. We are nobodies. No, Dominic said, his voice dropping to that hypnotic rumble. You are not a heart. Your mother, she wasn't who you thought she was. He stood up and walked around the table. He knelt beside her chair, putting him at eye level with her. For a man of his status to kneel was unheard of. In my dreams, Dominic said, I saw you leading an army. I saw you standing on a mountain of bones, holding a flag of silver and black. I didn't know who you were, only that my soul knew yours. I thought it was madness. But now that you are here, now that I smell the suppressed power in your blood, he took her hand. His skin was burning hot. I think you are the White Wolf, the one the legends talk about, and your brothers sold you because they were terrified that one day you would wake up and realize you were stronger than all of them combined. Serafina pulled her hand away, standing up so abruptly her chair screeched. But, he unbuttoned the top of his shirt, pulling the collar aside to reveal his collarbone. There, branded into his skin, was a mark. It wasn't a tattoo, it was a birthmark. It was the shape of a crescent moon. Now look at your chin, Dominic said. Serafina touched the scar on her chin. The scar she got when she was 6. It was a crescent moon. My scar. It's not a scar, Serafina, Dominic said. It's a mate mark. We are soulbound. I felt the pain when you fell off that swing set 20 years ago. I woke up screaming with a phantom pain in my jaw. The air in the conservatory seemed to vanish. Serafina couldn't breathe. You felt it. I feel everything you feel, Dominic said, stepping closer. I felt your heartbreak in the car last night. It nearly tore me apart. And I promise you, he reached out, cupping her face with both hands this time. I will never let anyone sell you, hurt you, or suppress you again. You are my queen, and it is time you woke up. Just then, the glass doors of the conservatory shattered inward. An alarm blared. Smoke grenades hissed across the floor. Silas burst into the room, gun drawn. It's the High Council. They know she's here. Someone tipped them off about the White Wolf. Dominic looked back at Serafina, his eyes glowing pure gold. I sold, he snarled. He grabbed Serafina's hand. Run, with me, now. The chaos was instantaneous. The pristine silence of the Sterling estate was shattered by the rhythmic thud-thud of heavy boots and the shattering of glass. Dominic didn't look back. He gripped Serafina's hand with a strength that should have hurt, but somehow felt grounding, like holding onto an anchor in a hurricane. He sprinted toward a mahogany bookshelf at the far end of the library, slamming his palm against a seemingly decorative bust of a Roman general. The shelf clicked and swung inward, revealing a dark concrete tunnel. "Go," Dominic commanded, shoving her gently into the darkness. "Follow the lights on the floor. Don't stop for anything." "What about you?" Serafina screamed over the sound of gunfire erupting in the main hall. "I have to buy us time. Silas can't hold them alone." "No." Serafina grabbed his arm. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her, a foreign, wild sensation that made her teeth ache. "You said you'd never let me be sold again. Don't you dare spend your life like currency to save mine." Dominic froze. He looked down at her, his golden eyes wide with shock at her defiance. For a second, the Alpha King looked completely disarmed by the girl from the trailer park. "I am not spending it," he growled, grabbing the labels of her borrowed dress and pulling her close for a searing, desperate kiss that tasted of coffee and adrenaline. "I am investing it. Now go." He pushed her into the tunnel and slammed the shelf shut. Serafina was plunged into dim red emergency lighting. She didn't wait. She ran. The tunnel was narrow and cold, smelling of damp earth. She could hear the muffled sounds of violence above her roars that didn't sound human, the distinct crack of bones breaking. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but beneath the fear, something else was waking up. The wolfsbane. Dominic said she hadn't taken it in 24 hours. Her skin felt too tight. Her senses were dialing up to a painful frequency. The sound of her own breathing was like a jet engine. The smell of the damp concrete was overwhelming. She burst out of the tunnel into a subterranean garage. It was filled with luxury cars, but the garage door was already open. Standing there, blocking the exit, were 3 men in tactical gear. They wore silver armbands, the mark of the High Council's enforcers, the Silver Guard. Target acquired. A wrench, anything. The guard fired. Bang. Serafina screamed and ducked, but the impact never came. A black blur dropped from the ceiling rafters. It was Dominic. He had bypassed the tunnel and come through the ventilation. He hit the floor in a crouch, half-shifted. His canines were fully extended, his nails were obsidian claws, and his eyes were burning suns. He didn't look like a man. He looked like a god of war. He moved faster than Serafina's eyes could track. He tore the rifle from the first guard's hands and snapped it in half like a twig. The second guard drew a silver knife, slashing at Dominic's chest. Dominic roared, taking the slice across his pectoral muscle without flinching. He backhanded the man with enough force to send him flying across the garage into a parked Ferrari. The third guard, the leader, leveled a handgun at Serafina. "Don't move, Alpha!" "The girl dies." Dominic froze. Dominic froze. Blood, dark and ominous, dripped from his chest onto the concrete floor. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving. "Let her go, Elias," Dominic snarled. "This is between me and the council." "The council doesn't want you, Sterling." Elias spat. "We want the abomination, a latent with alpha blood. It's a genetic ticking time bomb. The order is to terminate." He aimed at Serafina's head. Time seemed to slow down. She looked at Dominic, who was coiled to spring but too far away. Terminate. The word echoed in her mind, just like her brothers wanted to sell her. Just like the world wanted to forget her. Something inside Serafina snapped. It wasn't a transformation. It was a pressure release. The wolfsbane in her system had been keeping the lid on a volcano, and the lid just blew off. No, Serafina whispered. The air in the garage suddenly dropped 10 degrees. The shadows stretched toward her. Elias's finger tightened on the trigger. No, Serafina screamed. She thrust her hand out. She didn't touch him. She didn't have telekinesis, but the sheer force of her alpha commando, untrained and amplified by 20 years of suppression, hit Elias like a physical blow. Drop it. The voice that came out of her mouth wasn't hers. It was deeper, layered with a harmonic resonance that vibrated the very foundations of the garage. Elias's eyes rolled back in his head. His wolf forced him to obey the command of a superior alpha. His hand spasmed, and the gun clattered to the floor. He fell to his knees, clutching his head, nose bleeding. What? What are you? Dominic didn't waste the opening. He lunged, knocking Elias unconscious with a precise blow to the temple. The garage fell silent, save for Serafina's ragged breathing. She stared at her hands, which were trembling violently. Dominic turned to her. He was bleeding, his shirt shredded, but he didn't care. He looked at her with a mixture of awe and absolute terror. The voice, he whispered. You have the voice. I don't know what I did, she stammered, her knees giving out. Dominic caught her before she hit the ground. He scooped her up effortlessly. We have to go. The command takes energy you don't have. You're going to crash, Sarah. And when you do, it's going to be bad. He threw her into the passenger seat of a black matted G-Wagon. He jumped into the driver's seat, hot-wired the ignition with a press of a button, and roared out of the garage, leaving the unconscious enforcers in the rearview mirror. As they sped onto the bridge, tearing through the wooden barricade the guards had set up, Serafina looked at Dominic's chest. The silver cut wasn't healing. It was sizzling. You're hurt, she said, her voice small. I've had worse, Dominic gritted out, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Hold on, we're going off-grid. They drove for 4 hours, deep into the Olympic Peninsula, where the trees grew so thick they blocked out the sky and the GPS signal on the dashboard died. Dominic navigated by memory, turning onto an overgrown dirt track that looked like nothing more than a deer trail. The adrenaline of the escape had faded, replaced by a searing heat in her veins. She was sweating profusely, but her teeth were chattering. Her skin felt like it was being stretched over a frame that was growing too fast. It hurts, she whimpered, curling into a ball. Dominic, it burns. It's the detox, Dominic said, his voice tight with worry. Your body is burning through 20 years of poison. Your wolf is waking up and she is angry. They arrived at a cabin. It was a rustic, A-frame structure hidden beneath a canopy of ancient firs. Dominic parked and immediately came around to her side. When he opened the door, Serafina tried to step out but collapsed. He caught her, swinging her into his arms. He kicked the front door open and carried her inside. The cabin was cold and dusty. He laid her on the rug in front of the massive stone fireplace. Stay here, he ordered. He moved with a frantic speed, gathering wood, lighting a fire, and finding blankets. He covered her, but she kicked them off. Hot, she gasped. Too hot. I know, baby, I know, Dominic soothed, kneeling beside her. But you have the chills. You need to sweat it out. He grabbed a bottle of water and tried to get her to drink, but she gagged. I would sooner rip my own heart out, Dominic vowed. He pulled her into his lap, rocking her back and forth. Look at me, Sarah. Look at me. She forced her eyes open. Everything was blurry. Dominic's face was swimming. "Tell me," she rasped. "Tell me about the dream." She needed a distraction. She needed something to anchor her to reality. Dominic brushed the damp hair off her forehead. His expression was tortured. "I was 8 years old the first time. I dreamed of a forest I'd never seen, and a girl sitting by a river. She was crying, but her tears turned to diamonds when they hit the water." "That sounds expensive," she managed a weak joke. Dominic managed a sad smile. "As I got older, the dreams changed. I saw you growing up. I saw you in that trailer. I saw your brothers yelling at you. I felt your hunger when they didn't feed you. I felt your loneliness." He tightened his grip on her. "I searched every pack registry in North America, but you weren't registered. You didn't exist on paper. They hid you well." "Why?" she asked, tears leaking from her eyes. "Why me?" "Because of who your father was," Dominic said softly. Serafina froze. "My father? He was a drunk who died in a bar fight." "That was your stepfather," Dominic corrected. "Your biological father was General Titus, the former enforcer of the Royal Guard." Serafina's mind reeled. General Titus was a legend, a war hero who had vanished 20 years ago after a coup attempt in the capital. "He was executed," Serafina whispered, "for treason. He was executed for trying to expose the corruption in the High Council," Dominic said darkly. "He fell in love with a human woman, your mother. He knew the council would kill his half-breed child, so he made your mother run. He gave her the Wolfsbane formula to hide your scent, to hide your power. He died to buy you time." Serafina stared at the fire. The flames danced in her vision. "So my brothers, they knew? They knew you were valuable. They didn't know why. They just knew that if they stopped the medicine, things got weird. Things moved. Birds fell out of the sky, so they kept you drugged to keep you manageable." A wave of nausea hit Serafina so hard she doubled over. She screamed, her back arching. "It's happening," Dominic said. Femin Sanston, "It feels like it's breaking." "It's your bones," he said, his voice breaking. "They've been soft for too long. They are hardening, strengthening. It's going to be the worst pain of your life, Sarah. But I am right here." Dominic did the only thing he could. He pulled her tightly against his chest, absorbing her thrashing. He let his own aura flare, wrapping her in a cocoon of alpha power to stabilize her. But as he held her, Serafina noticed something. His shirt was soaked in blood. The silver wound from the garage, it hadn't closed. In fact, the black veins of silver poisoning were spreading up his neck. "Dominic," she gasped, clarity cutting through the pain for a second. "Your chest." "It's fine," he lied, his face pale gray. "Focus on you." "You're dying," she realized with horror. Silver poisoning was slow, agonizing, and fatal if not treated. And they were in the middle of nowhere? "I heal fast," he murmured, his eyes drooping. "No." Serafina slapped his cheek. "Don't you dare close your eyes. You're the Alpha King. Heal yourself." "Can't," he slurred. "Using my energy to stabilize you." He was siphoning his own healing ability to keep her heart from stopping during the detox. He was choosing to let the poison kill him so she could survive the transition. "Stop it," she screamed. "Stop helping me. Heal yourself." "Not an option," Dominic whispered. He slumped against the stone hearth, his breathing shallow. "Life for you, dying for you, seems right." "No." Serafina dragged herself out of his arms. The pain in her body was blinding, but the fear of losing him was worse. She crawled over him, straddling his waist. She ripped his shirt open. The wound was a gash across his chest, bubbling with black froth. She didn't know what to do. She wasn't a healer. She was a waitress. "You are the White Wolf," a voice inside her head whispered. "You are the daughter of Titus." Serafina placed her hands over the wound. She closed her eyes. She didn't try to command him. She didn't try to force it. She reached for the bond. The connection, he said, had existed for 20 years. She envisioned that golden thread connecting their souls. She felt it, a thick, warm cable of light in the darkness. She grabbed it, and instead of pulling energy from him, she pushed. She pushed every ounce of her waking power, every bit of the fire burning in her veins, into him. Heal, she thought. Live. Her hands began to glow, not gold like Dominic's eyes, white, a blinding, pure, starlight white. Dominic's eyes snapped open. He gasped, his back arching off the floor as the white light poured into his chest. The black vines retreated instantly. The skin knit together before their eyes. The silver was purged, dissolving into gray mist. Serafina held the connection until the last scratch vanished. Then the world went black. She collapsed onto his healed chest, the silence of the cabin returning, save for the crackling fire and the steady, strong beat of the Alpha King's heart. The cabin smelled of wood smoke, rain, and the metallic tang of dried blood. But beneath it all, there was a new scent, something akin to ozone and blooming jasmine. Serafina woke up with a gasp, her body jerking as if she were falling. "Easy, you're safe." The voice was rough, familiar, and wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She blinked, her vision clearing. She was lying on the bearskin rug, but she was no longer cold. Dominic was sitting against the hearth, and her head was resting in his lap. She sat up quickly, panic sizing her chest. "Your chest." The silver. Dominic caught her hands. He wasn't wearing a shirt. His shredded one lay in the corner. His chest, broad and sculpted, was flawless. Not a scar, not a mark. Just smooth, sun-kissed skin over hard muscle. "It's gone," Dominic said, his eyes scanning her face with a look of reverence that made her shiver. "You healed me, Serafina." I don't know how," she whispered, looking at her palms. "I just didn't want you to die." "You are a white wolf," Dominic said, his voice solemn. "Do you know what that means? It's not just a coat color. In our history, white wolves are conduits of pure moon energy." He traced the line of her jaw. "The council didn't want to kill you because you're an abomination. They wanted to kill you because a white wolf is the only thing that can challenge the authority of the High Council. You are a living revolution." Serafina pulled her knees to her chest. "I don't want a revolution. I just want to be free. I want to go somewhere where nobody knows my name." Dominic's expression darkened. He looked toward the cabin window, where the first gray light of dawn was filtering through the trees. "We can go," he said. "I have a safe house in Zurich. We can change our names. I can walk away from Obsidian Ridge. I would give it all up for you, Sarah. Today." For a moment the offer hung in the air, tempting and sweet. Zurich. A life without war. A life with this man who looked at her like she was the center of the universe. But before she could answer, the sound of an engine cut through the silence. Dominic was on his feet in an instant, moving in front of her, a low growl rumbling in his chest. A battered Jeep Wrangler tore into the clearing, mud spinning from its tires. It skidded to a halt, and the driver's door flew open. It was Silas. He looked terrible. His suit was torn, his glasses were cracked, and his left arm was in a makeshift sling. He stumbled toward the cabin. "Alpha," Silas shouted. "We have a problem." Dominic relaxed slightly, but didn't lower his guard. He opened the door. Silas, how did you find us? Emergency transponder in the G-Wagon. Silas gasped, leaning against the door frame. I disabled it after I tracked you, so they can't follow. But you need to see this. The camera was focused on the grand steps of the Obsidian Ridge headquarters, Dominic's home. Standing at a podium, surrounded by the Silver Guard, was a man with hair as white as bone and a face like a hawk. Counselor Holloway, Dominic hissed, the head of the High Council. But it wasn't Holloway that made Seraphina's blood turn to ice. It was the woman standing next to him. Isolde. She looked perfect, untouched by the chaos of the previous night. She was wearing a black morning dress, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. My fiancé, Dominic Sterling, was a good man, Isolde was saying into the microphones, but he was seduced by a witch, a genetic mutant who used dark magic to enthrall him. We believe Dominic is dead, murdered by the creature known as Seraphina Cross. She's lying, Seraphina screamed at the screen. It gets worse, Silas said grimly. On the screen, Holloway stepped forward. Justice will be swift. We have captured the terrorists' accomplices, the ones who conspired to breed this monster. Two figures were dragged out from behind the podium. They were beaten, bloody, and terrified. Caleb and Jasper. Seraphina's hand flew to her mouth. These men, Holloway boomed, confessed to harboring the fugitive. They will be executed at sundown tonight in the Obsidian Plaza, as a warning to all who defy the natural order. And if the creature Seraphina Cross does not surrender herself, we will burn the entire Rusty Creek trailer park to the ground. The feed cut to static. Silence filled the cabin. They have my brothers, Seraphina whispered, and they're going to kill everyone I grew up with. It's a trap, Dominic said, his fists clenching until the knuckles popped. I sold this out. She wants the pack. With me dead, and you executed, she becomes the regent of Obsidian Ridge by default. We can't go, Silas warned. There are 300 Silver Guards there. It's a suicide mission. Dominic looked at Seraphina. Silas is right. If we'll go back, we go to Zurich. We let the world think we're dead. Seraphina looked at the tablet. She looked at the faces of her brothers, the brothers who sold her. They deserved prison. They deserved prison. They deserved poverty. But death and the innocent people in the trailer park? She thought of the years she spent afraid, the years she spent swallowing pills to make herself small, the years she let men like Caleb and Jasper dictate her worth. She stood up. The fear that had defined her life was gone, burned away by the white fire in her veins. No, Seraphina said. Dominic turned to her. Sarah, I am done running, she said, her voice steady. I am done hiding in cabins and trailers. They called me a monster. Fine. I'll show them a monster. She walked over to the table and picked up a steak knife Dominic had used to cut wood. She saw her reflection in the blade. Her eyes were no longer brown. They were swirling with flecks of silver and violet. Silas, she said, do we have any allies? Silas straightened up, surprised by her tone. The northern clans hated Holloway, but they are scattered. Dominic stared at her, A slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. He walked over and kissed her forehead. "That's my queen," he murmured. "Let's go start a war." The sun was setting over Seattle, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. The Obsidian Plaza was packed. Hundreds of wolves from the city packs had gathered, surrounded by the armed Silver Guard. On the raised platform, Caleb and Jasper were on their knees. A hooded executioner stood behind them with a silver broadsword. Counselor Holloway checked his watch. "The sun is down. The witch has not appeared. Proceed with the execution." Isolde stood nearby, a smirk playing on her red lips. She had already ordered the drapes in the master suite to be changed. She was ready to be queen. The executioner raised the sword. Boom. The sound wasn't an explosion. It was the sound of a heavy iron reinforced truck smashing through the security barricades at the south entrance. The crowd screamed and scattered. He looked like the Grim Reaper. "You seem surprised, Holloway," Dominic roared, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Did Isolde forget to check for a pulse?" Isolde's face went pale. She stumbled back. He's supposed to be dead." The smoke cleared to reveal a second figure standing beside Dominic. Serafina. She wasn't wearing a dress. She was wearing black cargo pants and a leather jacket she'd taken from the cabin. Her hair was loose, whipping around her face in a wind that she was creating. Her eyes were glowing with that blinding starlight white. "You wanted the white wolf?" Serafina's voice was amplified, echoing off the skyscrapers. "Here I am." The crowd went silent. The legends were true. "It's a trick," Holloway yelled. "She's a witch. Kill her." The Silver Guard charged. Serafina didn't flinch. She felt the power of the moon rising within her, a tidal wave of energy. She didn't need a gun. She threw her head back and let out a scream that shifted into a howl. It was the howl of the Alpha of Alphas. The sound hit the Silver Guard like a physical shockwave. Half of them dropped to their knees, their wolves forcing them to submit to the superior authority. The other half, the ones too drugged or conditioned to submit, kept coming. "Now!" Dominic shouted. From the shadows of the surrounding buildings, the northern clans emerged. Wolves Dominic and Silas had rallied in the last 6 hours. They crashed into the Silver Guard, turning the execution into a battlefield. Dominic tore through the melee, heading straight for the stage. He moved with a brutality born of 20 years of waiting. He reached Holloway, grabbing the old man by the throat and lifting him off the ground. "You poisoned my mate," Dominic snarled. "You tried to exterminate her bloodline." "It was for the greater good," Holloway choked out. "The greater good is over," Dominic said, and threw Holloway off the stage into the crowd of angry wolves below. Isolde tried to run. She kicked off her heels and sprinted toward the limo. Serafina saw her. "No, you don't." Serafina didn't run. She shifted. For the first time in her life, the bones broke and reformed, not with pain, but with joy. Fur erupted from her skin, white as fresh snow, luminous and soft. The white wolf snarled, revealing teeth that were sharp as glass. She didn't bite. She didn't need to. She simply placed one massive paw on Isolde's chest, pinning her to the ground, and let out a growl that vibrated Isolde's very bones. Submission. Isolde went limp, her neck baring in total surrender. She pissed herself in terror. Serafina huffed, disappointed. She stepped off the woman, leaving her for the authorities. The battle was over. The northern clans were cheering. Serafina shifted back. It was seamless. One moment she was a wolf, the next she was a woman, kneeling on the stage, breathing hard. Dominic was there instantly, wrapping his jacket around her. "You did it," he whispered, kissing her hair. "You ended it." Serafina looked up. The crowd was kneeling, not in fear but in awe. In the corner of the stage, Caleb and Jasper were huddled together, still bound. They looked at their sister with eyes wide with terror. Serafina walked over to them. Dominic stayed a step behind, letting her handle it. "Sarah," Caleb wept. "Sarah, thank God. We knew you could do it." Quiet, Serafina said. Her voice was calm, cold. She pulled a knife from her belt and cut their bonds. "You're free?" she said. "Free," Jasper blinked, hopeful. "You mean we're good? We're family, right?" "You're free to leave," Serafina corrected. "But you are not family." "Family doesn't sell blood." She turned to Silas, who had joined them on stage. "Silas, calculate the debt my brothers owed the cartel, the 200,000. "Yes, Luna," Silas said, the title rolling off his tongue easily. "Pay it," Serafina said, "and then draft a contract. Caleb and Jasper Cross will work off that debt in the Obsidian mines. Minimum wage, no breaks, until every cent is paid back." Caleb's jaw dropped. That will take 20 years. "Then you better get started," Serafina said. She turned her back on them. "Get them out of my sight." Guards grabbed her brothers and dragged them away. Their pleas faded into the night air. Serafina turned back to Dominic. He was smiling, a true, dazzling smile. "You're ruthless," he said admiringly. "I learned from the best," she replied. He took her hand and led her to the edge of the stage. Below them, thousands of shifters looked up, waiting. "What now?" Serafina asked. "Now?" Dominic squeezed her hand. "Now we build a kingdom." He raised her hand high in the air. "Behold," Dominic roared. "The white wolf, the queen of the west." The howl that rose from the city was deafening. It was a song of a new era. Serafina looked at the moon, hanging full and bright above the skyline. She wasn't the girl in the trailer anymore. She wasn't the girl in the trailer anymore. She wasn't the latent. She was Serafina Sterling. And her reign had just begun. And just like that, the girl who was sold for pocket change became the woman who owns the bank. Serafina didn't just survive, she rewrote the rules of the game. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who try to bury you forget that you are a seed. What do you think? Did Caleb and Jasper get off too easy with 20 years of labor, or did they deserve the executioner's sword? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of betrayal, magic, and sweet revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next episode of our werewolf romance saga. Until next time, keep howling.